Oh goodness, I'm on subsection E, aren't I again? What does God add that man could not add in 4? The 5th recording. What does God add? His self. It's just about what the Christian story picked up, the Christian religion story picked up, in ending up worshipping the messenger, and the messenger being crucified, sacrificed, apparently according to Paul, the perfect sacrifice, whatever the perfection of such an abominable concept of sacrifice might be. They find they worship a God who dies for them. And a sort of combination of dreadful guilt and gratitude for forgiveness, and a heart-wrenching concern for the suffering of the one who has been so kind to them. They turn to God. But of course it's their God in a conception of sin and a concept of a noble God that must be paid. Goodness gracious. Not a fatherly God, but one who, in his own self-righteousness, comes up with a way of justifying you and has to suffer accordingly to do it. It seems noble in the circumstance of such a fearful, frightening God, who pays for such state of being by hurting himself. I don't really see how this pays for the harm that we're supposed to have done. You see, it's not a conception of the perfect family. It's a conception of the perfect monarch, king, emperor, one who lives in splendor and affluence and feels slightly guilty about not looking after his subjects in the same way. So he constantly goes out onto the streets and throws away coins to the poor, and then retreats to his palace again, because of course he hasn't thrown away anything like enough to rescue all of his poor, because that would make him in poverty. And what would be the good of that? He wouldn't be there to rescue them then. Look, my God is not that. No way, no way. My God is the perfect dad, not the perfect king. It's an insult to call him the king. He's not a king. Kings were abominable in worshipping the things of this world. My God is not that. He is creator of all, and I trust in his good purpose, that he has wonderful purpose. Why would I do anything other than this, given my very being turns on his creation of such? Love you, Heavenly Dad. And yes, I am a self that he's enlarging and blessing every day when he opens my eyes to see the millions of blessings that we receive, and all those that we cannot even see and notice. My God is not just an awesome God, a monarch. He's a loving God, Heavenly Dad, a perfect Dad. And I'm finding out daily what that perfection truly means. And it's lovelier and lovelier. Why? Because I focus on whatsoever is good and lovely and thank him for it. And sometimes I manage to thank him for much that I wouldn't in the flesh normally thank him for. But I've come to trust him. And I find that such transforms me to a different state of consciousness and joy and being that I call kingdom living, because it seems to me to be a taste of heaven, of the communion of saints, of the goodness of our Heavenly Dad. Love you, Heavenly Dad. Thank you, Dad. For goodness, you see, Krishnamurti has taken on the Christian view because he's picked up on philosophy, which has become very Western secular, and that is the destruction of self. Even the God, Jesus, destroys himself in a crucifixion. And Krishnamurti's done the same thing. We must die to our sin of preoccupation with the weeds, all this confusion of attachments and self and so on. He's picked up on the essence of Christianity, the misunderstanding of the Jesus story, where you end up worshipping the messenger instead of trying to understand the message and worship God. A mix-up where in the Christianity you've got a loving God who has his son crucified for our selfish state. Are you mad? How could you possibly, how did you do this? Oh, Paul, of course, because he didn't have the Christian story. He had the Judaic, or rather Greek hope solution to the Judaic story. I tell you, the Jesus story is not even Greek, not even Persian. You could say, I have a hope that our Heavenly Dad rescues us through the Jesus story. Why do I have this hope? Because when I practiced it, whether you think as a consequence of rhyme or reason, I found fullness of life, joy, peace, hope, love, intense love, overwhelming love, where even this world seems transformed into beauty and loveliness. Oh, well, that's total delusion, you say, because it's clearly a mixture of good and bad. Or as the Christian says, good and evil. Yes, clearly when you're in it, if you can't see God. But if you're trusting in God, you'd be astonished at what you then experience. And I give the same challenge to anyone who would follow John 17 as would follow Krishnamurti. Practice what it says and see. Do you find practicing following Krishnamurti to be a wonderful, enlightening, transcendent experience? Or do you seem to endlessly find it's only for Krishnamurti, apparently, And looking at him, you're not absolutely sure of that either. I'm mocking now, aren't I? That's not very godly. But I do it to rescue you from your delusion. Well, that's my childish hope. And so it is too with the Jesus story. And taste and see. Do you find trusting that God is your heavenly dad? That do you find looking upon him, or looking upon all that's good and lovely, brings you to long for God's existence? Your God, of course. You can't long for anyone else's God. I mean, it has to be the personification of what you value. But do you long for such? And do you find living according to such being the case to utterly transform your life into joy and happiness? If you don't, fine. Throw it away. Pass on. What else is on the menu? Krishnamurti. I've been there, tried that. Buddhism. No, doesn't look too hopeful. Essay. But I don't think you will do that. And you can only find out by tasting and seeing. Whatsoever's good and lovely, think on these things. Do you find it quickens you in gratitude to want God to exist, that you might thank him and delight in his being? It's the same as when you fell in love. You chose to believe in this other person as a godsend. Someone just too lovely for words. Bless you, and you were blessed for a season. But the blessing was to teach you and to lead you to your heavenly dad. Because now you know what love is about. Wow, bless you. Bless God, our heavenly dad. Thank you, heavenly dad.